school or syllabus, you can ask. I hope you all have started your revisions, right? Like this is the best time to get into a revision mode, and I will advise all of you to start revising as early as in December itself. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult at the last moment to grasp and understand and keep everything in your head for exams. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so anyone has any doubts regarding anything regarding the growth models, etc.? I think we also had one class where, so what all things we covered in the last class? Did we go beyond growth models? Or we finished only till here?
We reached population interaction.
Okay, yes, I think, yeah, we reached population interactions, which is not in this notebook. I think we did it. I could not access the notebook that day, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So great. So we have reached population interaction, and I think we discussed, I asked you to go back and read about all these things, right? So just to quickly, let's summarize first the population interaction. Just one moment. Yeah. So let's just quickly, can it go a little up? Yes. So population interactions. What all interactions did we talk about? In terms of gain and loss, let's say there are two species. So quickly, let's just go. If this is species A and this is species B, it can also come as population A or population B. Okay, of the same species also sometimes they, if there are different populations, I'm not sure if you people have heard the concept of subspecies or groups. So there are groups, for example, have you heard that a herd of camels, a pride of lions, a murder of crows, all these are group. One group stays together, correct? So that will become one population. So it works for all population dynamics. But just quickly tell me, if there is an interaction where both populations are at benefit, what will you call that kind of population?
Mutualism.
Mutualism, correct. So I'll go one by one. Let's next is for Fatima. Fatima, if both populations are, let's say one population is at benefit and other is at loss, what will you call this interaction?
Predation.
Predation, correct. Can just predation? Is there any other interaction that is like the same?
Yes,
Yes.
patism.
Parasitism. It comes from the word parasite. Okay. So parasitism. There has to be an S here. Yes. So parasitism and predation both have similar kind of interactions. Now this plus and minus sign can go for any species. Species B can be at benefit and A can be at loss. It's not strictly for species A only. But I also told you what was the difference. Fatima, would you also like to quickly tell me what was the difference between predation and parasitism? Though they have similar kind of interactions among two species, but there should be a difference, right? What is the difference? When will you call that this interaction is predation interaction? It's a prey predator relationship, and this particular interaction is a host and a parasite relationship. If I give you two species and ask you to study about their relationship and interaction, and you find that one species is at benefit, other is at loss. Anyone else? Shaheen, what do you think?
Predation one, like the bigger one, like the species A is bigger, and the parasitism one, the like it lives in the host body.
Or outside the host body, both is possible, but in predation, the species at gain or at benefit, you're trying to say that that will be bigger one,
Bigger.
right? So that it can predate
Yes.
and kill most of the time. Okay, there are also cases where predation is done where smaller organisms predate in groups, correct? So they always hunt in packs like wolves. So wolves can also hunt something bigger than themselves, but they hunt in pack then. So same thing is done by lions and tigers. They hunt together, so they can hunt something which is bigger. For example, a giraffe, which is much bigger than a tiger. Make sense? But the point is, it is killing from outside, and that killing involves sheer strength. So the species at benefit has to be overpowering, most of the time individually overpowering the prey. If they cannot overpower the prey individually, then they do so in group. Is that clear? But in parasitism, the species at benefit is smaller. Okay, again, like mostly, yes, it's smaller than the host body, so that it can live either on or inside the host body. Make sense, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, and if both of them are at loss, then both species are at loss, then oh, I'm so sorry. What then?
Competition.
Then it's competition. Yes. And since you have studied, you have read the paragraphs, can you tell me one example of competition? What is competition? What does NCERT say about competition? What have you learned? Any example? No one went back and
Like
studied
in
the
the
yes, Fatima.
like in lakes, the
Yes.
fishes and other like other water
Mhm.
animals will have a competition for the resources.
Yes, you're correct most of the time. Or different species of fish sometimes compete for the same kind of food. Also, it happens that, but one thing is, if species are living together over time, over like the course of evolution, I told you that competition gets fixed. They choose what they would feed on, so there is less competition and both can thrive, right? In a long run, that happens mostly in nature. But sometimes what happens is, if a new species visit the place or the habitat of a old species, for example, there are many migratory birds that cover long distances and move from one continent to another entirely, a different habitat. Let's say if there is a Siberian crane or a flamingo that migrated to some lake in some other continent, other country, and they also feed on zooplanktons, phytoplanktons, algae, etc., crustaceans, small. And there is a species of fish that anyways not naturally was feeding on these resources. So for that season, that migratory season, both of these species, the fish which is the native species of that lake, and the flamingo or the crane that just migrated there, they will have an interaction which is competition among both of them for the same resource, correct? Do you understand?
Yes.
Yeah. And in competition, in your book, if you will see, there's one concept of intrinsic rate of increase they have shown. So I have told you about the models, right? So can you tell me, in a competition, how will this is a question from boards, how will R be affected in this kind of a population growth for both? So competition is between fish, let's say a native fish, which is native means it's living there only, and a migrated bird. Let's take flamingo. So flamingo migrated there. So how will R be affected of this fish? R means intrinsic growth rate or natural rate of increase. How will this be affected? Just think logically and tell me. Any idea? Anyone? Am I audible, people?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So how do you think the intrinsic growth rate of the fish will be affected? Okay, so at least you should try answering, because if you're wrong, it's completely fine. You will learn. So what can happen is that the fish were not very they were not habituated, or they were not conditioned to competition, right? So they were naturally feeding on their resource without a competition before the flamingo arrived in that season. And when they arrived, clearly all the fish species will now get limited by the resource, because the resource is being shared by another species, and that species is also present in a very huge number, because when they migrate in very huge numbers. So all the fish now will get less food to survive and thrive on, correct?
Yes.
So it is seen that during that season, the flamingos rate of growth gets a little down, because fish's rate of growth gets a little down, and it's okay, because once the flamingos are gone, then this fish will again start laying lots and lots of eggs. Okay, is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, great. So this is what you must have read and you should take care about. Okay, what are the other interactions? Others are if one is at benefit and other has no benefit or loss. And this type of interaction is known as
Commensalism.
Commensalism.
yes, it's called commensalism. Okay, common, not common. Okay, take care of it. Commensalism. And what does commensalism means? Any example of commensalism from your reading?
Barnacles in a whale.
Yes, barnacles growing on a whale. Great, that's a good example. What are barnacles? Anyone know what is a barnacle? If it is growing, it has to be a living organism, right?
Yeah, it's like
But anyone knows
small.
what it is? To which kingdom, phylum, class, order that we studied? You studied in class 11th.
Sir, can you hear me?
where they belong, what kind of organisms they are. Okay, go and look. Just out of curiosity, you should look at these things. Okay. Also, some orchids as epiphytes grow on other plants. Okay, that's also commensalism, because that other plant does not have any no, Atif, I cannot hear you. So Atif is writing in the chat. Can anyone hear Atif? Please confirm. I'm not able
Sir,
to
I
hear
can hear
you.
you. Can you hear me?
I can see that you are speaking. Can anyone hear Atif? Is it my issue?
Yes, sir.
Am I audible, people?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now that's weird because I cannot hear anyone. Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Are we audible?
Yes, you're audible now. I think there was some issue. Great. So you are answering about barnacles, Atif?
Yes, sir. They're like small arthropods as far as I know.
Yes. So what kind, like, what are arthropods? So they are actually you're right, they come in arthropod, but we mostly put it in the subclass. So it constitutes of a subclass which is known as Cirripedia. Okay, sort of arthropoda. We call it Cirripoda, Cirripedia and Crustacea. So they are crustaceans. Okay, so they are under the phylum Arthropoda, but they are under subphylum Crustacea. Have you remember? I didn't teach you this, but in your 11th class, you must have studied about crustaceans, subphylums, and subclasses, suborders. These concepts. Is that clear to you? If not, then please go and just revise it. Okay. Am I audible clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you're right, barnacles come under the phylum Arthropoda. You will also like to remember the subphylum, which is Crustacea. So they are crustaceans, okay, in the sea. Crustaceans are mostly found in water. They are water arthropods. Okay, then the next one is minus and no effect. This is called Commensalism. Okay, a quick example of Commensalism. People, a quick example of Commensalism.
Fungi and bacteria.
Sorry, come again, please. Sorry. I hope you people are not. Are you affected by the noise around me? There's some kids playing just outside my window. Is it affecting my explanation or my voice, people? Yes, no?
No, sir.
No? Okay, great. So let them play. I just wanted to be sure. Yeah. So someone was giving an example of Commensalism quickly.
Penicillium.
Yes. So the fungi Penicillium notatum. So this is the species which has no effect, and because of this growing, what is affected? The bacteria has negative effect. Okay, cool. So this was the last part of this chapter. If you have any doubts from this chapter, please ask. Otherwise, we can start with the new chapter today. Anyone has any doubts with this chapter?
Sir, how orchids grow on the other plant is an example for commensalism.
Yes, so very good question. So you might be thinking here that when orchids are growing on other plants, they are basically, there are two type of growths. So this is a plant, and do you know about a climber which is known as, I forgot its scientific name. There's a climber that acts as a parasite to plants. They belong to daughters. They are daughter plants. But what it is name? What's its botanical name is Cuscuta. Yes, I remember. Have you heard of Cuscuta?
Yes, sir.
In Hindi, it's known as Amar Bel because it's a Amar means immortal basically. So it doesn't die because it just shifts host from one host to another. What it does it, so this climber, you will see that it's on the tree like this. It goes through on the tree, and it has some spine-like nodules which goes inside the tree's trunk and derive nutrition, food from tree's own phloem, the vascular bundle system. So that's like a plant parasitism. So Cuscuta is a plant parasite because it's actually harming, affecting the plant. So it acts like a parasite. Okay. On the other hand, the question was how orchids growing on other plants um, is commensalism and not parasitism, is because in this case what happens is, so there are branches, in between branches you see sometimes there are some holes. Owls live in these kind of holes, right? Or just some
Yes.
branches which have you can also see lichens growing on some trees in jungles, right? So these lichens are not at all affecting the plant in a negative way, if you see. So similarly, this epiphyte, it simply means it grows in the space available, okay, as an epiphyte. It gets good nutrition and water because of this space where it gets filled, but it's not actually adversely affecting the plant. It's not taking from plants already synthesized food through photosynthesis. So these orchids can do their own photosynthesis sometimes, or can just depend on organic debris or anything that gets accumulated in these places. So those are called epiphytes. So there's a difference between a parasite and an epiphyte. So orchid is an example of a epiphyte. The word epi means, remember in biology, what does the word epi means? People, epidermis,
Outer.
yes, surface, outside. So they're just growing on the plant. Okay, they're not taking sharing from the plant's own resources. Make sense why they are not, why it is a commensalism?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yes, Shine, good, very good question. So I'll stop here for a couple of minutes for you to just reflect on this chapter, see if you have any doubt. Please ask if you have any doubts right away.
Can you please explain the
Yes.
mutualism of the
Mhm.
the showing in the bee pollinator thing for the orchid flower?
For the
For the in the bee pollinators for the orchid flower. That was in the textbook.
bee pollination, you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, so you're talking about so we were discussing about this. You're talking about where bees come and sit on the plant, right? On these orchids. Are you talking about the the orchids that mimic?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So in mimicry, orchids that mimic, that's not an example, good example of mutualism. That actually is an example of commensalism itself, because only the plant is getting benefited, but the bee has no benefit from it. Mostly, it does not get food. It also does not get a mate. So it was just a mimicry that fooled the bee to visit that plant. It came, visited, and then realized that, oh, it's just a mimicry. But by that time, the two bell-shaped pollen sacs which were on the top, they release pollens, and the pollen gets in the bee's body, gets stuck to the bee's body, and bees just spread it. A true mutualism is where bees, sorry, yes, where there is a bee and there is a nectar producing flower. Okay, so a plant that produces nectar, and when bee pollinates that kind of a plant, that's mutualism, because bee gets nectar, bee gets food, and flower gets its pollens spread. So flower gets to cross change gametes and do sexual reproduction. So that's a true mutualism. Okay, is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any other doubt, any other question, people? So if in exam it comes for mutualism, you have to write bee with nectar producing plants. If it is mutualism, the safest is, which is already in your book, barnacles growing on a whale, orchids growing on other plants, or plants mimicking like female beetles or female bees, that you can use as an example. Okay, any other doubts from this part, people? So as we can start with the next chapter, which is just give me 1 second. So just to confirm, chapter 14, which is ecosystems, right? Is it included in everyone's syllabus?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, that's great then. So shall we start with ecosystem if no one has any doubts regarding the current chapter, or you need some time to just reflect on the chapter? Take a couple of minutes. Okay, I'll just get some water for myself. Think and let me know if you have any doubts. Otherwise, I'll start. Okay, so any doubts, people? From the current chapter? No?
No.
Okay, cool. So let's start with ecosystem today. So let me quickly ask you, what do you think is an ecosystem from your, based on your class? If it, how many have covered this chapter already in the school? Just asking so that I can expect some inputs. Anyone? Atif, yes, you can raise your hands in the chat. You cannot speak.
Sir, we just started.
Started. Okay, that's great. So we'll go together. Okay, I think others have completed. Lubna, Atif, and Fatima. Great. Okay, cool. So tell me, what do you understand by ecosystem? What does it mean? If you have to just tell in one sentence what is ecosystem, what will you say?
Different natures,
Different natures,
like unit of natures.
different units of nature. Okay, that's quite close, and it's very good answer. Different units. What do you mean by that unit? Would you elaborate on that unit part a little, Fatima?
Like
Mhm.
terrestrial, aquatic, man-made,
Mhm.
like those are
Mhm.
units of nature.
Right. So you gave examples. So there's a difference between elaborating and giving examples, but you are correct. So on the basis of your own example and your own very close answer, can you now connect the dots and give a definition for ecosystem that is not coming from book but is coming from you? You are right. Whatever you said was correct. I just want you to connect the dots and make it more comprehensive. Come on.
Different species interacting with
You
each
started
other,
with yes, right, different species interacting with each other.
and like the physical environment that surrounds the different species.
Perfect. So that one kind of unit that you were talking about, where different living organisms interact among themselves, and also they interact with the physical environment present around them. So that's why it's called a system, because it's a self-sustained system where everything is connected to the other thing. Correct? That is what Fatima meant in the first place, and very well put. So let's start with the basic definition. Everyone, write down. Ecosystem is defined as, can I call it a functional unit of nature, like you said, Fatima? It's not just structural, because habitat, niche, biomes, they all were also units, but they were structural units that we studied in the last class, right?